So many people come to me and they're like, I don't have 90 minutes to start my day. Well, now you do, and you can check it out. You can test it. Well, don't take my fucking word for it. Run the experiment. Find out for yourself, right? Do this for yourself. Figure out how much flow it's going to produce, how much work you get done, how shocking the leverage is, and build a new habit in this time. We're all home. I think I do it with his arms like this all the time. I don't.
So basically what you're saying is he's a smart dude.
Dopamine is cocaine. 53 years old, I'll do hip hop dance classes online.
She's like, what? Oh God, what is this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Welcome, everyone. This is the Rome Podcast. Yet to be named. We're just getting it started here. My co-host is Mr. Cory Richards, founding member of Rome. There he is. And also a National Geographic photographer, an explorer, an athlete. Been to the top of Everest.
Couple times.
Twice? Yeah.
Couple times.
We did a series together last year called The Line, which was he and his partner Topo's attempt on a brand new attempted line on the north side of Everest. And today we are going to dive in. This is our attempt to connect better with you, with our audiences right now in these sort of unprecedented times. And we're going to welcome an old friend, Mr. Steven Kotler. I'm going to get him to jump on here in a moment. And I'll kick it over to you, Cory, in terms of introducing what we're attempting to do here. And, we're flying by the seat of our pants. We don't really know exactly what we're doing, but we really want to bring some benefit to all of you. That is the purpose here. And Cory and I have been talking about it for a while, and we thought, hey, this would be a good time to just get it going.
Yeah, so like CJ said, this is a warm up to a bigger, broader podcast that we're launching, and we were in the middle of launching, but obviously with the current state of affairs in America and really half of the world, a lot of those plans got shut down, and we were really sort of getting a little bit into the weeds on how do we want the audio to sound, and how are we presenting this, how are we bringing it to the world. And the reality is that the world told us how it's going to be brought to the world, which is from our living rooms with crappy audio. But it's better to do and to make in these times, especially for people who are used to being active and can be sort of restless. So we just wanted to dive in and start exploring, namely, what our forthcoming guests are doing in this time to challenge or to deal with the challenges that they're facing around fitness, around flow, around creativity, around management of time, around this massive disruption. So in this moment, we really want to lean into the area of expertise that each one of our guests is going to have. And today, Steven Kotler, his area of expertise is really around flow and creativity. And I think CJ knows Steven better than I do, so I'm excited to get to know him. But maybe CJ, you could give a little bit more background on who Steven is.
Yeah, Steven is a New York Times best-selling author. He's an award-winning journalist and the executive director of the Flow Research Collective. He is generally considered one of the world's leading experts on human performance. He's the author of 11 books. I'm the author of 0 books. How many books have you written, Cory?
I've written 0 books, -0. I keep thinking, this would be a good time to start my memoir.
Yeah, I have so many in my head, but he actually has written 11. The Future is Faster Than You Think, Stealing Fire, Bold, Abundance, and The Rise of Superman are some of the ones that we're really familiar with. His work has been nominated for 2 Pulitzer Prizes. I can't even say it, much less be nominated for it. Been translated into over 40 languages and appeared in over 100 publications, including the New York Times Magazine, Atlantic, Time, Wired, Forbes. And he is also the co-founder of the Rancho de Chihuahua Dog Sanctuary. So I am going to get him to jump in now. Steve and I have worked together over the course of the last decade on various promotional projects around these books. And he is always incredibly enlightening, in particular around understanding how the brain works. And I think at this time, in this sort of crisis time, how we can get into flow, and how we can find tools to help get through this, and even excel through it.
Cool. So basically what you're saying is he's a smart dude.
Super smart dude, super articulate. And also, I mean, part of the way that we know one another, actually, Dirk Collins is a mutual friend that introduced us, one of the founders of Ketone Gravity Research, is that he's an avid mountain biker, avid skier, and is just way into action sports in general, which is what Rise of Superman was all about, which is the book. And here he is.
Gentlemen, how are you all?
Steven.
Doctor.
Actually, Steven told me explicitly before this, I am not a doctor.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor. Definitely not a doctor. I don't want to play one on TV either.
You guys, both your setups are. I gotta take some cues. Of course, Cory's is like perfectly optically put together as a Nat Geo photographer, and the author of 11 books has all of his leather-bound books in the background. I've got some like hanging tapestry, and I got some work to do. Next episode will be better. Steven, thanks for joining us, man. We're really excited to have this conversation, and try to bring some benefit and some tools to the Rome audience and to Cory's audience, and hopefully we'll get spread around through the founding members' audiences. So why don't we just kick off with, how are you, man?
Good,
how are you
man.
doing?
Nice to see you.
You too.
I've heard your voice, but I haven't seen you a year. A while.
It's been a little while, yeah.
Been a little while.
Yeah.
I feel like the last time I saw you both, well, CJ, I've seen you since, but I burst into your office at Rome and Steven was just there.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, that was like you hadn't gone to Everest yet.
No, I hadn't gone and come home. Yeah, it's been. I think it has been almost a year.
You climbed a mountain in the interim.
I tried really hard, but it didn't happen.
Really
I didn't tap into the flow state, so it wasn't. I couldn't. No. What did you? So just for everybody, real quick, Steven, will you give us like a brief background of who you are? We sort of primed people, but maybe there's some words that you use and just some ideas that you have of who you are that can help further and deepen that knowledge for people.
The easiest way I think to sort of describe what I do, though it's weird, is I'm a guy 30 years at this point, studying how the impossible becomes possible in pretty much every domain imaginable. So science, technology, art, culture, sports, athletics, and my books tend to be either about peak human performance or disruptive technology. And the reason is whenever you see the impossible become possible, the vast majority of the time, you're seeing the intersection of really disruptive technology and peak human performance. People figuring out how to extend their capability and people how tapping into disruptive technology. And, just think about the action sports industry. We don't talk about the fact that Shane McConkey invented fat skis at the same time Shane McConkey invented Shane McConkey, but they came together at the same time, and the result was kind of the impossible. And that we see that over and over again. So I'm a guy who's done that. I've written 12 books about kind of what I've learned along the way. Well, actually 10, because 2 are novels, but they're sort of about what I've learned along the way. And that's what I do. And I'm the executive director of the Flow Research Collective, and we are a research and training organization. We study peak human performance. And on the research side, we're sort of partnered with everybody from USC and UCLA and Stanford and Deloitte and Formula One. And on the training side, we work with everybody from kind of US Special Forces through, CEOs of Fortune 100 companies to, tens of thousands of people in the general public, training them how to be their best.
So that, I mean, I think that brings up, like, you just open the can of worms that we really want to get into. Right now, we're in this moment where I think a lot of people feel like life is halted. Life has come to this screeching, smoke out of the axles stop. And I think there's a lot of collective frustration, a lot of confusion, maybe some fear, maybe even some anger. And I think a general sense of anxiety around that. And it sounds to me like, from what I've read of you, that this is actually a moment where this is a disruptive moment. It's not disruptive in terms of technology, but it's very disruptive. So for example, I'm just curious, what are you doing right now in your life to fill up this time? Because maybe there's some clues in there for other people.
So we've actually been talking a lot about this at the Flow Research Collective. We did a 2-hour event last night for all of our audience on peak performance in a time of pandemics. And there were a handful of things I emphasized. The first thing that you just sort of got to start with is the level of fear we're all dealing with, which is totally understandable and also massively overblown from a psychological perspective. And let me explain what I mean. I'm not trying to tell anybody that your fears aren't real and what's going on in the world isn't real, but we are particularly not well hardwired for it. And that's the more important point. So the brain evolved in an environment that was local and linear. Local meaning everything we dealt with was a day's walk away. Linear meaning the rate of change was really, really slow. Linear progressions are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 kind of thing. What it really means is, like, your great-great-grandfather's life was roughly the same as his great-great-grandson's life. And that's the speed and the scale we've evolved to process cognitively. We live in a world that is exponential and global, and the brain cannot process anything at that speed or that scale. And this is particularly true with something like a virus that is spreading exponentially. The brain literally can't process exponential change. Exponential change is a doubling. 2 becomes 4, becomes 8, becomes 16. We see it in technology when we talk about, like, Moore's law. Why is the smartphone in your pocket a million times cheaper and smaller and more powerful than a supercomputer from the 70s? Because Moore's law, which says computer power doubles every 18 months because the number of transistors on an integrated circuit double, grows exponentially. And we don't see that often in the real world, but we're seeing it right now. And because of our networks and our sensors, we're actually seeing exponential growth in real time. And the brain literally shorts out when it encounters it. It does not like it. And it starts to make you a little bit hypervigilant. Compounding this, the brain evolved in an area of immediacy, right? The threats we evolved to deal with were like, there's a tiger in the bush, run away, get the spear, right? Like, that's what we evolved to deal with. We did not evolve to deal with what are called probabilistic dangers. Probabilistic dangers: terrorists might attack, the economy might nosedive, COVID-19 might swallow us all, right? Like, those are probabilistic dangers. And the tricky part is the brain doesn't shut down its vigilance, hyper panicked response until probabilistic dangers are gone completely. Unless you actually shut down the vigilance response, the fear response, it won't turn off naturally when there are probabilistic dangers. So that's the first thing to need to know is, yes, there are reasons to be freaked out, but we are handicapped by our neurobiology in the face of this particular problem. So whatever feels bad about it, your brain is ramping it up. Forget that what the news media is adding to it, but your brain is ramping it up to 11 just on the nature of this. So
is there a way to short circuit that? I know there's so much more that you obviously
No, that's exactly where I was going to go. That's totally right where I was going to go. So this isn't, so we're going to talk about flow, right? States of peak performance, but this isn't really flow right now. This is what I like to call the positive psychology basics. And positive psychology has spent a lot of the past 20, 25 years trying to figure out how to make you happier, right? How to make you less anxious and a lot less happier. And really, there are 3 things that work super well. And normally, when we train people at the Flow Research Collective, we say do 1 of these each day because people are busy. At this point, people are redlined and not quite as busy. I personally, I've been doing all three, and let's talk about all three. They're all going to be familiar, but let's talk about why they're good and why they work and why now more than ever and which ways to do them. The first thing is a gratitude practice. The reason is this. Sounds stupid, sounds new age.
No. I had the note in my brain. I'm like, I need to do my gratitude journal.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, totally. And I mean, let's talk about why, because this is another reason why today feels so crappy. Your brain gathers a ton of information every second. There's a bunch of different numbers out there. 13 million bits of information is the minimum acceptable. Like we know it's that much. It may be way more, it could be into the billions, but we know it's 13 million because it's been counted. And whatever the case, it's way more than we can process, right? Consciousness, what we can pay attention to at any one time, is about 2,000 outputs. So 13 million to 2,000. What happens in the brain is we sift and sort information. We filter out all the shit that's not critical to survival, A, or our goals, B. Those are the two big filters. And survival is more important. So the first filter all this information hits is the amygdala. It is your threat detector. Because it evolved in an era of immediacy where it wants to be biased to, oh, that might be a tiger in the bush, rather than it's not at all, right? It's really sensitive to anything that could look like danger, and its ratio is screwed up. Your brain takes in, your senses gather 9 bits of negative information for every positive bit that gets through. So gratitude tips that. Your brain goes, and this is where gratitude works and affirmations don't. Affirmations are bullshit. If you work at Walmart and you look in the mirror all day and go, I am a millionaire, I am a millionaire, I'm a millionaire, you got a bullshit detector that goes, shut the fuck up. No, you are not. No, you are not. No, you are not, right? And it's demotivating, and it actually takes performance in the other direction. Gratitude, you're literally thanking the brain for things that already happened. Mm-hmm. And as a result, your brain goes, oh, this is real. Bullshit detector doesn't go off. It goes, well, in fact, you did wake up this morning and were able to hike up that mountain, Stephen. So your legs are working and you're grateful for this. Cool, right? And as a result, you start taking in less negative. Work done at Berkeley shows it's like 6-1, 5-1, you can drop it. And it's a 5-minute practice, right? List 10 things you're grateful for and try to really feel the gratitude, or list 3 things you're grateful for and turn 1 into a longer paragraph about why. Those are the 2 ways that people recommend. They work best. I like the 10 more. 3 doesn't have enough of an impact. We are doing all kinds of research. Okay, now I'm going to mention flow for the first time. We'll talk about why flow is important in this mess later, but flow is a state of optimal performance. We feel our best and perform our best. It's the zone. So you get so focused on what you're doing that everything else vanishes and performances goes through the roof, right? So we're doing a study with USC and a neuroscientist named Glenn Fox, who's sort of the world's leading expert on the neurobiology of gratitude. And we're looking at the relationship between gratitude and flow. And we've already figured out, we're at the front end of a long project, we've already learned that people with regular gratitude practices have more flow in their life. And we have some understanding on why that is. But so we know there's a direct relationship between gratitude and peak performance in general, but really calms down that response. I will also say that for anybody who has a gratitude practice these days and has tried, if you're experiencing anything like mine, when you're in the face of something like this that is so overwhelming, on its own, gratitude is not going to work for you. It's just not a big enough tool. Second tool has got to be mindfulness, respiration-based practice. And mindfulness, right, fancy word for minding the mind. All it means is when we are practicing mindfulness, we are teaching the brain that it performs best when it's calm and non-reactive. That's what you're really doing in mindfulness. And there's specific ways that you can kind of practice meditation, practice mindfulness right now that are better for downregulating the nervous system and also better for increasing immunity. So what we like to do is we start people off with inhales that are half as long as your exhale. 5 seconds in, 10 seconds out. You want to try to get above 7 seconds in and 14 seconds out, because what happens around there at like a 14-second exhale or so, the brain doesn't like to waste energy at all, ever, right? It always wants to conserve energy. And panic is really expensive for the brain, neurobiologically, physically, right? You know that. So, right, you panicked on a mountain before and it burns up all your energy in a second, right? It's a disaster. So the brain doesn't want to panic. So if your exhales are long, the brain goes, oh, dude, your exhales are long. You must be calm. Let's not burn all this energy making norepinephrine and cortisol, the two things that underpin panic, and you start calming down. So I do that for 3 to 5 minutes. And then I do Wim Hof breathing or breath of fire. It's a rapid exhalation. If you don't know what breath of fire is, it's an ancient yoga breath technique. It's just fast exhales, basically. Look it up online. The reason it matters now, and first of all, if you're really strung out and that breathing might not even work for you, right? It'll calm you down a little bit, but it's not going to really settle you all the way. That kind of hyperventilation, it changes the oxygen ratio and nitrogen ratio in your bloodstream, and it sort of forces you to calm a lot down. Also, there's a lot going on, so it blots out thought. Most importantly, and this isn't my work, this is Brian McKenzie, one of the founders of CrossFit, former Navy SEAL. I believe he did this work with Laird Hamilton and some scientists. I'm not sure if Laird was exactly involved in this project. And a guy I work with at Stanford, Dr. Andrew Huberman, was involved in this project a little bit. But they found that breath of fire is the only thing that they know of that can improve cardiovascular function while you're sitting on your ass. So you literally can expand your lung. So this is something you can do even if you're sick.
So this is the best news for athletes listening. They're like, sweet, I can sit on my ass and make
sit on your ass. Well, by the way, Cory, I got to tell you something. I hate training cardio, especially like during ski season or mountain bike season. So I'll go to the gym and lift, and I'll take my dogs for hikes, but I'll train cardio doing this and out on the hill, right? I won't have a special I'm getting pretty good. I don't know if you could get the results you need, right? But for what I need, I'm getting pretty good results. So you got to double down on the box breathing. And then what I like to end with, or on the breath of fire, I like to end with what's known as box breathing. This is a technique devised by former Navy SEAL Mark Devine. It's 4 sides to a box, and if you don't, we won't go through it here, but if you don't know what it is, the reason it's so cool, especially for action sport athletes and those of us on the ADD side of that spectrum, when your brain doesn't want to ever freaking slow down, there's so much going on in box breathing that it basically, you can't think of anything else. So it really...
In box breathing, sorry to interrupt, box breathing, just to clarify, is like, say a 7 count in, 7 count hold, 7 count out, 7 count in, like hold. That.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the secret, so there's 2 secrets to box breathing, and you sort of hit on it. When the last side, when you exhale all the air from your lungs and you hold your breath. So if you do that for more than, say, 7 seconds, basically, it automatically induces a panic response, a fight or flight response. But what you train the brain to do is focus through it and stay calm, so you can start that next breath cycle. So this is especially great in times of panic where we're all redlining. Box breathing literally trains you to feel that rise in sensation, not plug into it, not attach to it, and just kind of move on to the next thing. So I like to do those things. The research shows you can get really good cognitive emotional benefits from 11 minutes a day of mindfulness. So I'm saying 5 minutes of gratitude, 11 to 20 minutes of mindfulness will give you really serious results. And finally, the last one, which is super obvious to everybody listening to us, is exercise, right? Exercise calms the nervous system down like nothing else. And here's what you need to know about exercise and the nervous system. So at the front edge of a flow state, the prefrontal cortex shuts down, front of your brain, and it gets really quiet upstairs. That's when the voice in your head sort of dials down, right? And we all experience this in exercise. 20 minutes in, when it gets quiet upstairs or so, that's exercise-induced transient hypofrontality. It's the front end of a flow state. But what it actually means is your nervous system has flushed your stress hormones out of your system. There's been a shift in your blood oxygen levels, and you're at the front edge of flow, but you've calmed down. So how long do you need to exercise for in this time? If you're not really feeling it, 20 till it gets quiet upstairs, 20, 25 minutes, and then double down, add in a mindfulness practice, a gratitude practice. That's where I think everybody should start.
One of the things that I've found for me with mindfulness specifically, there's a lot of responses, right? I talk to people, I'm not good at meditating. And one of the things that I try to instill in people when I talk about it, it's like the only bad meditation, because a lot of people are adverse to that word. They have stigmas attached to it. The only bad meditation is not meditating. And it doesn't have to be like, that's the only time you're doing it wrong. There's no real way.
So it's such an important point. I always figure if people, your job when meditating is quite simply just to try to ignore your thoughts and focus on your breath. And it's never going to work. Right. It's never going to, like, you're never going to win. Well, actually there's
not really a success in it. It's not a buy-in. It's not like I'm doing it right or I'm doing it wrong. You're just doing it. The
truth of the matter is, if you remember what I said at the start, which is there's the only right or wrong is you're trying to teach the brain that is most effective when it's calm and not reactive. So that's the actual goal. So what you really want to do is those negative thoughts, those thoughts that are sticky that pop up in the middle of your meditation. The whole goal is to say, okay, I'm not paying attention to that. I'm going to focus on my breath, right? Like those are like, for guys who are really goal oriented, like I am, I love little goals. Like those are the little goals as you go along. Oh, I didn't latch onto that thought. Oh, I'm staying with my breath. I'm staying with my breath. Those are the little victories.
So it's a little bit about sorry, Cory.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
That idea of, I think they call it noting, right? Too. If you're trying to meditate and you're trying to empty your thoughts, it's okay. You're having a thought. It's fine. You just know there's a thought. That's the mindfulness of it, is that you're just getting an awareness around what's happening and not just like going into this cycle of reacting. And there isn't a right or wrong on it.
I think about it. I'm sorry, Cory, you're going to say something?
Oh, that's exactly the point that I was going to make, is that we think that we're supposed to be empty-headed and clear of thought, when in fact the practice, as it's been most clearly described to me, is the noticing of thought and coming back to breath. That is the game, or coming back to mantra.
I always like to think about it in terms of like being a skier or a mountain biker or anything. But like when I'm skiing down the hill and there's a bump in the ground that I didn't see and it bounces me sideways for a second, I correct my body and I ski on and I'm done. Like, I don't think about it. I'm not beating myself up all the way down the hill because the mountain had a bump in it that I didn't, right? Like, I just sort of, okay, that happened, next, right? And we all do this as athletes. And to me, that's the game when you're doing mindfulness. It's the same. I try to think of it that way.
And I want to go back real quick to gratitude, because for a time I worked with this amazing guy. I'm sure you know him. His name's Dan Buettner, who did Blue Zones, which looked at the enclaves of longevity all over the world. And we actually did an assignment for National Geographic on happiness. And so one of the things this is sort of ironic, but the most miserable I've ever been in life was trying to photograph an article on what happiness is. But that's probably for a whole bunch of different reasons. But the one thing that I tried doing and then it failed was I set a gratitude alarm. So I had an alarm on my phone that would go off every hour. And the point was to every hour name something just into the ether, say, I'm really grateful for this, and sit with that. And it worked for a little while. Just as my gratitude journal has worked for a little while. And then for some reason, I just started ignoring it. Like, how do we overcome the hurdles in our brains that block us from sitting down and meditating, from doing the gratitude journal, from doing the exercise? Because inevitably, we're in a fucking apartment. We're going to come up against it. We're like, you know what? I want to watch Family Guy instead. And that's so how do we overcome that hurdle?
So, I was trying to figure out
Family Guy. It's hard.
I got stuck. I was actually looking for the funny. I was like, I can't come off Family Guy and say something funny. Yeah, nothing came to me, so I apologize. I just sat there like a moron. But the way I like to train people to do it. So let me add in one more thing and answer your question that way. One of the most important flow states have triggers, right? These are preconditions that lead to more flow, and flow only shows up when all of our attention is focused in the right here, right now, the present moment. So that's essentially what all the triggers do. There's a bunch of neurobiology underneath it, but they all drive attention to the present moment. And the most obvious one is literally complete concentration, right? No distraction. And what the research shows is if you're interested in flow, this doesn't exactly apply to athletes. This applies to people in office environments, work environments, and definitely if you're stuck at home, is unless you're a night owl, start your day with 90 to 120 minutes of uninterrupted concentration. Best thing you can do for flow in your life. So one, if you're a creative of any kind, you have to survival, right? But this is what we do. I mean, with every company we work with, the first thing we do is walk in and say, look, if you can't put a sign on your door that says this is fuck off, I'm flowing, you can't do this work. So we also tell people that they should prepare the night before for the 90 minutes of uninterrupted concentration, doing two things. I think you want to end your day with a gratitude list. I like to end my day, finish my work day, and before I go home, I do it then, because that's going to happen every day. So it's a regular set time. That's one way you get past this. Corey, you don't try to do it every hour. But once a day where you set a time and you have it. I mean, it's a great thought, but I can see that it would make me freaking crazy after like 3 hours, and by 5 hours, I'm done with it. So I try to do, I end my day, I write down my goals for the next day, right? My to-do list basically, which is really important for flow and for performance. I do a gratitude practice, and then I practice distraction management. I shut everything down that could distract me before I come back to work in the morning. And no, especially now, no media. So we've been advising people to do media fasts if they can right now for periods of time, because it's just too heavy on your nervous system. I did a 30-hour media fast in the middle of the week myself, because I had a bunch of stuff that I had to do, and I had to go out in public and talk to people, and I had to sort of get my head together. So I did a 30-hour media fast. But what I've been trying to do on days when I can't do that, because I have to do this kind of stuff all day, is whenever I'm ending my workday, 5, 6 o'clock, gratitude list, to-do list for the next day. And that, especially now, if you're in your apartment, you don't want to go Family Guy, having a to-do list is extra important. And then distraction management. And then you start your day with your 90 minutes and you're ready for it the next day. All the media is off before you get to your desk.
When you say 90 minutes of uninterrupted concentration, or, no distraction, what do you mean? Like, what does that look like for you?
So, and it's a really good point, because it looks like a lot. So the most important thing is you want nothing that's going to provoke an emotional reaction. That's the most important thing. Because the minute you start having emotional reactions, right, the minute there are feelings involved, it's hard to control them, right? So you want to, I turn off anything, my cell phone, right? You're playing emotional Russian roulette every morning when you look at your cell phone first thing, right? That's what it is. And especially now, right? That's normal days. And now it's worse. So I like Twitter, Facebook, messages, alerts, everything is off. I turn it all off. The only thing I allow myself access to is Safari, and I only use that to look up as I'm writing, to look up facts. And occasionally, if I'm writing, I'll write for 4 hours in the morning, and I'll break it up by occasionally like going outside and watching the sunrise over the Sierras, which I like to do, or I'll watch ski videos. And I'll watch like 2-minute ski videos, because they won't do anything to me emotionally. They might fire me up a little, right? But there's no emotion involved in a ski video, right? So I can have a little bit of distraction from, I've gone hard for a while and I want 2 minutes off, right? And then I go back. That's
Who's your favorite on the ski video?
I honest to God, I can't stop watching Candide. I've never been able to stop watching Candide.
It's art. It's absolute art. Right?
I'm really trying to figure out what the hell he's doing with his arms like this all the time. I don't. Dude, he flaps his wings and he gets more height. Anyways, I will watch Candide videos over and over and over and over and over again. Mostly just because I want to just get a break from. My brain needs to think process something for a second. So I'll do this, but I won't do anything. I won't do email. I won't do anything that takes away. We also tell people, this is, I think, really important for anybody who's got families or girlfriends or anything else, or bosses, if you want to do it in a work environment. You got to have your conversations ahead of time. So when it's worth talking about flow for half a second. When we talk about flow as peak performance, it's really a big peak. So, and I can go through all the science behind all this, but motivation and productivity can jack up 500% in flow. We'll see creativity, and this is work done in my lab, done at Harvard, some stuff done in the University of Sydney. Creativity and innovation go up 400 to 700% in flow. We'll see empathy spike in flow, happiness, overall well-being, and life satisfaction go through the roof. Learning rates accelerate. Work done by the Department of Defense found we learn 240% faster in flow. So all this stuff, it's a big push. So the point is 90 minutes to 120 minutes. It seems like a big ass block of time. People are like, oh my God, that's so much time. How am I ever going to do it? But if you drop into flow for 90 minutes and you're 500% more productive, oh my God, you know how much time you're going to save. So that's the trade-off you're looking at. But now the reason we want to double down on all of this so critically in this time of crisis is two things happen in flow. You get a big surge in neurochemistry. 5 different neurochemicals get flushed into the system. They're all feel-good chemicals, and all the stress hormones get flushed out of your system. So it resets the nervous system. It calms you down, puts you right back at zero almost instantly. Hugely important. Cory, you asked earlier, what's the switch? Flow really is the switch. You got to do the peak performance base. You can't go from redlined into flow. It's too big of a jump. You got to do that stuff to get yourself primed so you can actually focus during those 90 minutes, but you will slide into flow a lot quicker. Phenomenal, because it calms your stress hormones down even better. All the neurochemicals that show up in flow massively boost the immune system. This isn't my work. This is work done by Herb Benson at Harvard, but really boosts the immune system. So one of the reasons you want to double down on flow in this, in this time is it's phenomenal for resilience and it's phenomenal for productivity, which got to be the two things we all want right now.
Right.
So, right.
How do I be productive? How do I maximize on this time? How do I maximize on this disruption? I'm also curious. This is sort of a curveball question. CJ, like, how are we doing on time? Are we pretty good?
We got 20.
Okay, cool. So I was this morning when I was not in an uninterrupted state for the first 90 minutes of my day, I watched Trevor Noah from home, and he made a really funny joke. As he opened, he said, we're learning a lot of things, and he named 2 things, and then and the last one was, and your relationship is not as secure as you thought it was. And I think, so I don't know if you know anything about this. I know you're not a relationship psychologist, but I have to imagine there's some corollaries and some transferable practice and information that can help us right now when we're stuck at home with people that we genuinely love, but all of a sudden are finding that, oh my God, I kind of hate you a little bit too because I can't get away from you. I mean, is there anything there? Like, I'm just curious.
Well, no, I'm just trying to figure out where to start.
Yeah.
And I am not a relationship expert.
Right,
I mean, I have a bunch of psychologists who work for me who are. So
right.
I have access to them. Both my wife and I work from home. We've been married for 14 years. We have a dog sanctuary together. So we have lots of animals and we both work from home, which means we're together a lot. One of the secrets to being together a lot is not talking a lot of time. Like my wife and I talk after breakfast in the morning. Before I wake up, I do my writing, I take the dogs for a hike, and I come back. We'll have breakfast together, and we'll talk for a while. And then we will, like any couple who goes to work, we'll have another conversation at the end of the day and hang out maybe a little bit in the evening. But we really respect boundaries and stay away. And by the way, secret to doing this for long periods of time. And we live very far away from the world social isolation. Chris and I were joking earlier. Social isolation is my middle name. So, I live far away at the end of a very long road, halfway up a mountain with nobody around. But we do spend a lot of time together, and that's useful. I will also say a couple things that are worth knowing. the relationship between social support and happiness is, you can't, it's foundational, right? Like, in fact, if you look at what I often talk about the peak performance, psychology basics, the 3 things we covered. And then we talk about also kind of the other half of that equation, which is sleep, hydration, nutrition, and social support. And those are all about like the body and energy, and social support is actually in that category because it's so foundational to us. And we just actually, you guys know, or Chris, CJ, Will at Ojai Energetics. We've got a research partnership with them on CBD flow and cannabis and flow and THC and flow and things like this. And indirectly in a study we just did, we went out to learn something about CBD and flow, and I think we failed to learn what we wanted to learn entirely. But what we did learn accidentally, and it's the first time it's ever showed up, we've ever suspected it, but it's just so clear in the data, is there's a direct relation. People who have more social support have more flow. Direct correlations right there. But, so you need that right now, but you also, right, you got to learn how to do that. And I want to say, one thing I was thinking, since there's so many action sport athletes in the audience, it's worth mentioning. So one of the reasons action sports is such a flow trigger is because things like novelty, complexity, unpredictability, and risk all drive dopamine into our system. Dopamine is a feel-good focusing chemical that drives us into flow, and it's all over action sports. So we're all addicted to it. If you're an action sport athlete of any kind, if you're an outdoor athlete of any kind, you're really addicted to flow, and it's a pretty addictive chemical. So part of the weirdness, this is not relationships, this is just flow, but I went here because I popped into my head. I thought it was useful. We do a little bit of work with like Navy SEALs who are no longer Navy SEALs, or professional action sport athletes who are retiring because they have families and don't want to risk their lives anymore. And it's a very hard transition for a lot of people. And the ones who are super successful are guys who do sort of what you do. They turn that love of action sports into a love of creativity and art. And the reason is, in art, when you connect ideas together, we call it pattern recognition, right? When you link 2 ideas together, every time there's a creative idea, that's pattern recognition. Get a little bit of dopamine. So for folks who are withdrawing from the flow of the mountains because they shut the ski resorts for the season right now, creativity is going to give you the same high. So if you don't play the guitar or dance or draw or write or whatever, for the time that you're at home, do it. Pick it up. That's your new hobby. That's what you could spend your 90 minutes of uninterrupted concentration on first thing in the morning if you don't have work to do, that sort of thing, because it's going to give you the same similar neurochemicals to what you were getting as outdoor athletes in the middle of a ski season. So that might be useful. And the reason I went into it is for action sport athletes who are getting a lot of that and using outdoor activity to reset their nervous system, who are suddenly stuck at home with their spouses, and there are others, that's a big part of the friction that's going on, I think. You're sort of like, you're going through withdrawal from a drug that's pretty powerful, known as flow, that you were getting all the time in the mountains because it's the middle of winter. I'm going through this. And the scaredest I've seen my wife since the start is when they shut down Kirkwood for the season.
Yeah. She's like, what? Oh God, what is this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that idea of creative flow, I think, is, Stephen, we worked on that a bit with Chase around Superman, and, he just put out a book, it's all about creating, and even talking to the team at Rome, we've been really encouraging everybody on the staff, no matter what position they have, to create something right now, because we are all in these sort of, hunkered down environments, and it feels really good, whether you write a poem or you draw something or you're trying to make something. We're making something right now. So I think that's really important right now, is that we're going to have to go inward a little bit because we can't go to the mountain. So it's a good way to feel joy.
Yeah, I always tell people I have a career because I learned how to turn fear into words. Right, I turned fear and pain into words. That's why I have a career. It's a really good muscle to have, to learn how to take a bunch of negative feelings and turn it into art in some way, right? Neil Gaiman, make great art.
What are some of your, this is just that brings up a really good point. If I think that we've got a lot of time on our hands right now, and people are often fascinated by your wealth of knowledge, your background. And aside from reading your books, are there any go-to reads that you're like, just that would be helpful, that can give people some more outside of everything that all of the research that you've done? Of course, like we want to point them towards your books as well.
No. It's a total, you're looking for peak performance books. What do you, I mean,
well, I mean, no, like, it doesn't, I don't even think it has to be
like,
sure.
I could give you my 3 to 5 favorite books that you know what I mean? They're not all the easiest reads. My favorite book, one of my favorite books of all time, is called The User Illusion by Torrey Anderson. He's it's a book on consciousness and the size of the unconscious. I think it's he's sort of the Carl Sagan of Norway, and this is his magnum opus. I love it. I think it's the best book on consciousness ever, and really cool. There's a book I still think everybody on the planet should read. It came out a long time ago, but it's so much more relevant now than ever before. David Quammen used to write the Natural Acts column for Outside, right? I'm sure you know that name.
I've done 3 articles with them.
Okay, so David's book, The Song of the Dodo, which I think if you care about the environment, it's the most important book you could possibly read, because it really explains what's going on today and the best way to kind of fight against it. It's amazing that book is so old, but I always say that, like, most of the smart people I know are somewhat grounded in evolutionary science and Darwinian theory. They just tend to think about things that way because life tends to work that way and the world tends to work that way, and we're evolutionary creatures, and it's a really smart filter for the world. And that book is it's a fun read, right? It's an adventure travel story, sort of. It's a science adventure story, but it also breaks down the entire history of Darwin and Wallace and all that early evolutionary thinking. And then it does island biogeography, which is a really fancy term, but it's the study of populations on islands, and it's basically what leads to our current environmental crisis, basically. Long story short. Great book. There's another book by going old school, but I think everybody will like it. One of my favorite books, Rob Schultes, another old Outside magazine writer, wrote a book called Bone Games. And it was he was the first guy to actually, he blazed the trail that I'm on. He was the first sort of journalist coming out of this world to dive into flow. And Bone Games is a look at kind of extreme endurance sports, mountaineering, things like that, and flow a little bit. He looks at some other things too, but I love those. Have always been my 3 favorite books. There's other writers I love, Joan Didion and things like that, but probably not. You don't want to be reading Didion right now. She always thinks
User Illusion, Bone Games,
and The Song of the Dodo.
The Song of the Dodo.
The Song of the Dodo. And also I want to give a shout out, by the way, just because if people haven't read this, especially people who are interested in performance, if you haven't read my buddy David Epstein's new book, Range, he wrote The Sports Gene, which is what everybody sort of knows him for, but he followed it up with a book on range, which is why narrow specialization loses compared to wide generalization.
I love that. I've been trying to, I tell students that all the time. We live in a world of be really good at this thing, specialize in this. And I'm like, actually, I totally disagree with that.
Totally disagree. Yeah. It goes against how we learn. I agree. Range is the best book on the subject. It's awesome. It's kind of a fun read. He's a great writer. I'm just glancing at my bookshelf and thinking, what else is fun? And so range is what's relevant from a high performance aspect. You asked earlier, like, what shaped my thinking? The 3 books I listed had huge impacts on my thinking. So
I just want to because I'm just cognizant of time, and you've been super generous to do this today and really appreciate it. But let's just back up real quick and hear your takeaways, because we've covered
let me add one final quick takeaway, and then we'll stack it together for everybody, because I think it's a package. The stack is also, all of us have what we like to call a primary flow activity. It's the thing we do that brings us the most flow. And if you're trying to figure out what yours is, think about what you did as a kid that brought you the most joy, right? For me, it's clearly skiing. That's my primary flow activity. You want to, right now, if you possibly can, double down on your primary flow activities. You want to calm down your nervous system with the peak performance basics. You want to devote 90 to 120 minutes of uninterrupted concentration to your work session in the morning, because we all got to be productive during this time, and you want to double down. I can't go skiing anymore. I was telling CJ a day ago, we were first talking about this. 2 days ago, it snowed at my house, and I built a 2-foot jump in my backyard and practiced nose butter threes. I'm 53 years old, right? And that's what I was doing. And it brought the biggest smile to my face, right? Like, I can't double down on skiing, but, I can find deserted spots in the backcountry to build little kickers, and I did it in my backyard, right? And if I can't get access to that, I will do stupid things. Again, 53 years old, I'll do hip-hop dance classes online, like just something to get my body moving in new fun ways. You just want to sort of double down on that stuff, because A, it's going to calm down the nervous system, and B, it's going to boost your immune system. So those are, to me, that's the double down on mindfulness, gratitude, exercise. You want to be doing that. You want 90 to 120 minutes of uninterrupted concentration to start your day. If you're a night owl, start your work session that way. Practice some distraction management ahead of time, so you're going in focused. And then remember to really, and you want to commit to your primary flow practice as if it was mandatory. Cory, you probably know this. I always say that the biggest secret to peak performance is a checklist. If it goes on the checklist, you do it. And you just make a law with yourself. If you write it down, it gets done. So that way, right?
And that seems really counterintuitive right now, because people are like, well, I have all this time, I don't need to write it down.
You want to double down on it.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I mean, I noticed that, I have a planner, and when I put something in my planner, even though it feels dumb to write emails, I actually do it. Versus if I'm I got to answer all these emails tomorrow.
But the reason you actually do it is because when you cross it off, that's dopamine. That's dopamine. Are you kidding? Dopamine is cocaine. When you snort cocaine, all it does is it releases dopamine in your brain, right? Cross off, it's the best. The other thing is, without that list, especially if you've never worked at home before, you don't know how to declare victory over your day. Right. And you can't calm down at night and relax and chill if you can't declare victory over your day. So I always tell people, figure out how many things you can be excellent at a day. For me, it's 7 to 9. And that's how many things go on my to-do list. It's never more. It's never less, unless I'm really feeling run down. Right. Yeah. And I know I can be excellent at 7 to 9 things in a day. And so that's my to-do list. I cross them off all day. Right. That's what I do. Gratitude list, to-do list, distraction management. That's how I end my day. And so I can start my day knowing what I'm going to do.
I think it's kind of funny that we're talking to, I think, one of the leading experts in peak performance, human performance across the planet. And we're listing these amazing, here's the things you can do during the day. And the fucked up thing is, the thing that we come back to at the end of it is make a list. I mean,
I always say, so the thing people get really confused with peak performance, right? So there's so I listed all the things that flow does for us: motivation, productivity, creativity, learning, cooperation, creativity, empathy. Why that list? That's a random fucking list of what the hell is going on? We are shaped by evolution. Evolution is a reaction. Evolution is driven by scarcity of resources. There are 2 reactions available to scarce resources. You can fight over dwindling resources, or you can innovate and make new resources, right? So fight, flee, and freeze are the fight side of that equation. Explore and innovate and create are the other side of the equation. Everything that gets amplified and flow is shit that helps us do one of those 2 things. That's what peak performance is. That's how we're biologically hardwired. And the stuff that you have to do that is so simple. That's the hardest part about being one of the world's leading experts on peak performance. Is the shit is so simple on a certain level, right? Peak performance is about getting your biology to work for you rather than against you. There's nothing else going on. That's just what it is. It's getting your biology to work for you rather than against you, because it gives you such a huge lift. That's why you're using checklists, right? That's getting your biology working for you rather than against you. You're creating little dopamine loops, little habits, burning it in. You're addicted to the dopamine. You're going to go through your checklist every day.
And maybe this is actually in some ways, I don't want to silver lining this, because I know that at leasting the world actually doesn't help anything. It's not an act of empathy at all. But I want to say that maybe there's, in some ways this is a gift for people to take a lot of what you've talked about today, and it's a distilled time in which people can actually put these things into practice.
My chief scientist said the same thing last night. He said something I'd never heard before, but he's totally right. I understood the analogy. So he said, habit formation massively increases in times of crisis. So it is really easy to create new habits in times of crisis. It has to do with the neurochemistry just that normally in your system, because you're more charged up, your brain has an easier time remembering stuff. So anything this is a phenomenal, the one thing that's the final thing, and then we can jump off this thing. But the thing that's worth knowing off of what you just said is this is going to end and opportunity is going to come back. And if you are redlined this entire time, if you're freaked out and panicked and not productive and not in flow and not taking care of yourself, that is the number one recipe for burnout. And so you're going to come out of this horrific experience burned out. So there's tremendous opportunity on the backside of this, and we're all going to need it. And you're not going to be able to take advantage of it because this was so hard on your system. And instead, what's going to happen is if you stay really burned out when this ends, even if you didn't get sick when this ends, when the stress goes away, you're going to get sick then, because your body will let down its right. And we all know that. And you don't want to, right? Like that's the time you really are going to want to double down. So my chief scientist pointed out, he's like, this is a great time to train your game. Fantastic for habit formation. Think about all the people we were talking about it yesterday, because so many people come to me and they're like, I don't have 90 minutes to start my day. Well, now you do, and you can check it out. You can test it. Well, don't take my fucking word for it. Run the experiment. Find out for yourself, right? Do this for yourself. Figure out how much flow it's going to produce, how much work you get done, how shocking the leverage is, and build a new habit in this time. We're all home.
Well, I think it's great advice, and it feels that way very much for me. I mean, even in the little habits that I'm ticking up, and I'm like, I kind of want to do that again today, even if it's my day off from whatever it happens to be. So thank you so much for taking the time. I want to point out to everybody that we are going to come back and do a whole longer form podcast with Stephen at another time, when we can dive more into the neurobiology, the neurochemistry, everything that he's really specialized in, and break down some of these concepts further. But we wanted to hit at this time of crisis and take your wealth of knowledge and kind of give it over to people in our audience. So thanks so much for taking the time to do it today.
A pleasure. But anybody wants more on this stuff, flowresearchcollective.com, all kinds of free resources there. And if you're really interested in training up your game, if you go to zerotodangerous.com, by the way, you can book a call and have a free peak performance consult with one of the psychologists on my team. Like that's there.
Zero to dangerous.
Zerotodangerous.com.
Zero to dangerous. Great.
That's
Steven,
the name of our core training. All right, guys.
All right.
You be good. Take care of yourselves. I'll talk to you soon.
Great.
See you
Thanks.
soon. Take care.
Bye.
See you, Steven. Yeah, some great stuff there from Steven. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, that was enlightening. And of course, again, I think we just need to point out that we named some books, and I asked Stephen specifically because I often think it's really interesting to ask authors what their favorite books are. But Stephen has 11 books that you can go out and read also that are amazing, that are specifically about increasing peak performance and diving into flow. And hopefully in our next conversation, we'll have an opportunity to ask some deeper probing questions about, the reality of hacking and all of this stuff. But we want to put a pin in that. And right now, just lean into all the positive stuff that he can lend to this conversation.
Yeah, we'll be trying to reach out to some of our other friends, the founding members of Rome, folks like Jimmy Chin, Ian Walsh, Jeremy Jones, Jim Morrison, Hillary Nelson, Conrad Anker, Sasha DeJulian, Rebecca Rush, Renan Oster. We'll try to get with as many of these folks as we can in the coming days. So thanks a lot for listening, and Cory, thanks for holding it down, my man.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.